Family humiliated me at Christmas dinner. I'm the bank manager reviewing their loan application signed by my Uncle Rick, who'd arrived at dinner dressed as Santa, drunk, and announced he was marrying his ChatGPT girlfriend, Cynthia, before vomiting in the nativity scene. He'd thrown candied yams at me while screaming that banks were run by lizard people, and I was probably their queen, then tried to baptize me with gravy to save my reptilian soul. That Christmas dinner was 3 months ago. Now his signature stares up at me from a $600,000 commercial loan request, and my hand hovers over the rejection stamp like it's a weapon I've been waiting my whole life to use. The fluorescent lights in my office hum as I spread the documents across my mahogany desk. Uncle Rick's business plan is surprisingly coherent for a man who'd humped our Christmas tree while singing Jingle Bell Rock in Pig Latin. He wants to open a craft brewery specializing in holiday-themed beers. The financials are solid. His credit score is acceptable. Any other loan officer would approve this without a second thought. My assistant knocks twice before entering, her eyes widening when she sees whose name is on the application. She'd been at that dinner. Everyone had witnessed my humiliation, and she quickly excuses herself when she catches the smile playing at my lips. I'm Victoria Ashford, senior loan officer at Cascade Regional Bank, and I've spent 6 years building a reputation for fairness and integrity. My family never understood why I'd chosen banking, why I'd moved 2 hours away to Seattle instead of staying in our small Washington town where everyone knew everyone's business. They thought I was stuck up, too good for Pine Haven's simple life. Uncle Rick had been the loudest critic, calling me the Ice Queen at every family gathering, making jokes about my designer suits and fancy city job whenever he had an audience. Christmas dinner had been his masterpiece, though. After the gravy baptism, while I'd stood there dripping and humiliated in front of 23 relatives, he'd announced that I'd probably foreclose on orphanages for fun and use homeless people's tears as moisturizer. Everyone had laughed. Even my mother had hidden her smile behind her napkin. But here's what Uncle Rick doesn't know about his niece, the Ice Queen. 3 weeks ago, I was promoted to Regional Credit Director. Every commercial loan over $200,000 in 3 counties now crosses my desk for final approval. The brewery he's planning? It's in Pine Haven, my jurisdiction. The building he wants to buy? It's the old Morrison warehouse on Main Street, the same street where I'd walked after that dinner with gravy in my hair while neighbors watched from their windows. I'd heard them laughing. I pull up Rick's credit report again, this time digging deeper. There's nothing disqualifying, but there's also nothing extraordinary. His debt-to-income ratio sits right at the threshold. 1 supporting document missing, 1 reference that doesn't check out, 1 environmental concern about the property, and this whole dream evaporates. I think about his fiancée, Jennifer, who'd sat quietly at that dinner while he'd performed his circus act. She'd apologized to me afterward in the bathroom, tears in her eyes, saying he wasn't usually like this. I'd told her it was fine. That family was family. But I'd been lying. I'd been cataloging every humiliation, every laugh, every person who'd watched my degradation and done nothing. My computer screen glows with possibilities. I open a new email to the environmental assessment team and type, "Priority review requested for Morrison warehouse property. Please investigate all potential soil contamination from previous industrial use. Flag any concerns immediately." The property had been a textile factory in the 1960s. There's probably nothing wrong with it, but there might be. And might is enough to delay. Delay is enough to make investors nervous. Nervous investors pull funding. I hit send and feel something warm unfold in my chest. The phone rings. It's my mother. She wants to know if I'm coming to Easter dinner. Uncle Rick and Jennifer are hosting, she says, her voice bright with forced cheer. They're planning to announce their wedding date. She hopes I can put the Christmas incident behind us, that I'm not the type to hold grudges. "Family is important, Victoria," she says. I tell her I'll check my schedule and let her know. After I hang up, I pull out the 3 business references Rick listed on his application. 1 is his brother, my father. 1 is his drinking buddy who owns the hardware store. 1 is Pastor Mitchell from Pine Haven Community Church. I dial Pastor Mitchell first. He answers on the 3rd ring, his voice warm and familiar. We exchange pleasantries, then I explain I'm conducting a routine reference check for Richard Ashford's loan application. There's a pause. Pastor Mitchell clears his throat. He says Rick is a good man with a good heart, that everyone deserves a second chance. I ask him about Rick's reliability, his character, his follow-through on commitments. Another pause. The pastor admits Rick had volunteered to organize the church's Christmas fundraiser, but hadn't shown up to 3 planning meetings. He'd promised to donate supplies, but never delivered. The church had to cancel the event. I thank him for his honesty and make careful notes. Insufficient reliability for commercial venture. Pattern of unfulfilled commitments. The hardware store owner tells me Rick owes him $4,000 for supplies purchased 8 months ago. My father refuses to give his brother a reference at all, saying he won't mix family and business. By the time I finish the calls, Rick's application looks like Swiss cheese. I haven't lied about anything. I've simply done my job thoroughly, the way I always do, the way the Ice Queen is supposed to. But I'm not done yet. I request the building inspection reports for the Morrison warehouse. They're 20 years old. I flag them as insufficient for current lending standards and require a new structural assessment. That's another $6,000 Rick will have to pay out of pocket. Another month of delays. I copy Jennifer on the email explaining the additional requirements, making sure to use my most professional tone. I am so sorry for any inconvenience. These are standard banking protocols for commercial properties of this age and type. I'm sure you understand we must protect all parties' interests. My office stays lit long after everyone else has gone home. I order Thai food and eat it while reviewing the comparable property values around the Morrison warehouse. The area is stable, but not growing. The foot traffic analysis shows declining visitors to downtown Pine Haven. The market saturation report indicates 3 other breweries within a 15-mile radius. None of this disqualifies the loan, but all of it raises questions. Reasonable questions, professional questions, the kind of questions an excellent loan officer asks before committing her bank's money. At 9 p.m., I compile my preliminary assessment. The document is 12 pages long, single-spaced, devastating in its thoroughness. Every weakness in Rick's application is highlighted and cross-referenced. Every missing piece of documentation is listed. Every concern is articulated with cold precision. I attach the pastor's reference notes, the hardware store debt confirmation, and my father's refusal to provide a reference. Then I add my recommendation. Application requires substantial additional documentation and remediation of identified concerns before advancement to approval committee. I lean back in my leather chair and look out at Seattle's skyline. The city glitters like scattered diamonds, cold and beautiful, and nothing like Pine Haven. Tomorrow I'll send this assessment to Rick with a smile in my voice and regret in my professional tone. I'll explain that these things take time, that banking regulations are strict, that I'm doing everything I can to help. I'll be the perfect niece, the perfect loan officer, the perfect ice queen. And he'll never know that every roadblock, every delay, every request for additional information is my hand on his throat. The gravy has been washed out of my hair for months now. But the taste of it, the humiliation of it, the laughter that followed it, that stays fresh. Uncle Rick wanted to baptize me into something new that night. He succeeded. Just not the way he intended. The environmental assessment comes back 2 weeks later, and it's beautiful. Not because there's contamination, there isn't any, but because the report is 300 pages of dense technical language that requires expert interpretation. I forward it to Rick with a note suggesting he might want to hire an environmental consultant to review the findings before we proceed. That's another $5,000 and another month. Jennifer calls me the next day. Her voice is tight when I answer. She asks if this is really necessary. All these extra requirements and assessments. Other banks have looked at their application, she says. None of them asked for half of what I'm requesting. I let silence hang on the line for 3 beats before responding. I explain that Cascade Regional has higher standards than most institutions, that we're protecting not just our investment but theirs as well. Wouldn't she want to know if there were any issues with the property before committing her entire future to it? She admits I have a point. I can hear Rick yelling something in the background. She covers the phone, but I catch the words, "Your precious niece," and "sabotage." I schedule a site visit to the Morrison warehouse for the following week. Standard procedure, I tell them. I need to personally assess the property before making my final recommendation. Rick agrees. His voice strained when Jennifer hands him the phone. He tries to make small talk, asks how I'm doing, mentions that Mom really hopes I'll come to Easter dinner. I keep my tone pleasant and distant. I'm very busy with work, Uncle Rick. You know how it is. He laughs nervously and says, yeah, he knows, banking is serious business. Then he adds that he's sorry about Christmas, that he'd been going through some things, that the holidays make him crazy. His apology sounds like it's been rehearsed, probably at Jennifer's insistence. I accept his apology with the same warmth I'd show a stranger. Water under the bridge, I tell him. Let's focus on getting this loan approved. He exhales with relief. That's my girl, he says. I knew you'd come through for family. I end the call and immediately pull up the liquor licensing requirements for Washington State. Breweries need specific permits, health department clearances, and zoning approvals. I make a list of every agency Rick will need to interface with and start making phone calls. The health inspector I speak with is a woman named Carla who graduated from the same university I did. We bond over shared memories of Professor Hammond's impossible economics exams. I mention I'm working with a client who wants to open a brewery in Pine Haven, in the old Morrison warehouse. She pulls up the property records while we talk. She notes that the building hasn't had a health inspection in 15 years, that they'll need to do a comprehensive assessment before any food service permits can be issued. It could take months to get on the schedule, she says, unless there are any concerns that would warrant priority inspection. I mention that my client has had some reliability issues with past commitments. She makes a note in her system. Zoning is even easier. The Morrison warehouse is in a mixed-use district that technically allows commercial food service, but there's a residential apartment building that was constructed next door 8 years ago. The tenant council has to be notified of any new businesses that might create noise or traffic concerns. They have 60 days to file objections. I request the notification be sent immediately. The zoning clerk is happy to oblige. She remembers me from a workshop I led last year on commercial development. She calls me a stickler for proper procedure, means it as a compliment. I thank her and suggest she might want to flag this application for extra attention given the property's age and the nature of the business. Easter Sunday arrives with rain. I drive to Pine Haven, listening to a podcast about financial regulations, mentally preparing for what's coming. Rick and Jennifer's house is a small rambler on the edge of town, already packed with cars when I arrive. I park a block away and sit in my car for 10 minutes, watching rain streak down the windshield. My phone buzzes with a text from Jennifer. So glad you're coming. Rick is making his famous lamb, the famous lamb that gave everyone food poisoning at Thanksgiving 2 years ago. But I don't mention that. Inside, the house smells like burned meat and desperation. Rick greets me at the door wearing a pastel sweater and khakis, trying so hard to look respectable that it's almost sad. He hugs me too tight and too long. Jennifer hovers behind him, her smile brittle as glass. She's lost weight since Christmas. The dining room is decorated with pastel eggs and fresh flowers. My mother sees me and rushes over, pulling me aside before I can even remove my coat. She whispers that I need to be supportive today, that Rick and Jennifer are under a lot of stress with the brewery plans. The bank is being very difficult, she says. I arrange my face into concern and promise I'll do whatever I can to help. Dinner is awkward. 20 people crammed around a table meant for 12, passing dishes and making forced conversation. Rick carves the lamb with hands that shake slightly. He's sober, completely sober, and it makes him seem smaller somehow. My cousin Dana asks about the brewery, and Rick's face lights up. He talks about his vision, the holiday beer varieties, the tasting room design. Jennifer adds details about the marketing plan, the local partnerships they're building. Everyone nods encouragingly. My Aunt Susan says it's wonderful to see Rick finally following his dreams. My father says nothing, just pushes food around his plate. Uncle Rick raises his glass for a toast. He thanks everyone for their support, for believing in him. He says this brewery represents a new chapter, a fresh start. He's done messing around, he says. He's ready to build something real. Then he looks directly at me. And I want to especially thank my niece Victoria, who's working so hard to help us navigate the banking process. She's been incredibly thorough, incredibly professional. I raise my glass with everyone else, meeting his eyes across the table. Of course, Uncle Rick. That's what family does. After dinner, Jennifer corners me in the kitchen while I'm washing dishes. Her hands twist together nervously. She asks if I can give her a straight answer about the loan. Be honest, she says. Are we going to get approved? I dry my hands slowly, choosing my words with care. The application has some challenges, I tell her. Nothing insurmountable, but Rick's financial history raises some flags. The property needs more documentation than initially expected. These things take time. She nods, tears welling in her eyes. She tells me they've already put down deposits with contractors, that they've told everyone about their plans. If this falls through, she doesn't know what they'll do. I touch her shoulder gently. I suggest they might want to have a backup plan, just in case. Maybe look at smaller properties, or consider bringing on investors to strengthen the application. She asks if I think it's going to be denied. I tell her I can't discuss specifics, but that in my professional opinion, they should be prepared for any outcome. She wipes her eyes and thanks me for being honest. When we return to the dining room, Rick is showing everyone the architect's drawings for the brewery. He's animated, happy, more alive than I've seen him in years. My mother catches my eye and mouths, "Thank you." She thinks I'm helping. They all think I'm helping. The structural assessment report arrives the following Tuesday. The Morrison warehouse has foundation issues. Nothing catastrophic, but significant enough to require $40,000 in repairs before the building can be occupied for commercial food service. The engineer's report is detailed and damning. I forward it to Rick with a note expressing my concern. This is a substantial additional cost that wasn't factored into your original business plan. We'll need to see updated financials showing how you intend to cover these repairs while maintaining adequate operating capital for the first year of business. Rick calls me within an hour. His voice is different now, tight with barely controlled panic. He asks if there's any way around the repairs, if we can just note them as future improvements. I explain that building codes are non-negotiable, that the bank's liability insurance requires all structural issues be resolved before loan disbursement. He asks if I can recommend any contractors who might do the work cheaper. I tell him I'm not allowed to make contractor recommendations, but that he should get at least 3 bids. He's quiet for a long moment. Then he asks the question I've been waiting for. "Victoria, are you trying to kill this deal?" I let shock color my voice. "Uncle Rick, I'm hurt you would even suggest that. I'm doing everything possible to help you, but I have a responsibility to my bank and to you to ensure this is a sound investment. These requirements aren't coming from me personally. They're standard banking protocols. If anything, I've been giving your application more attention than most because you're family." He apologizes immediately, says the stress is getting to him, that he knows I'm just doing my job. After we hang up, I pull out his file and add a note. Applicant becoming hostile and defensive when presented with standard requirements. Raises concerns about ability to handle business pressures. The tenant council in the building next to the Morrison warehouse files their objection right at the 60-day deadline. They cite concerns about noise, parking, and late-night activity. The objection triggers an automatic review period with the City Planning Commission. That's another 90 days before any permits can be issued. I forward the notice to Rick with an expression of sympathy. Unfortunately, this is out of my hands, but I wanted you to be aware of the timeline implications. He doesn't call this time. Jennifer sends a short email. We understand. Thank you for keeping us informed. My mother calls the next week. Her voice is careful, probing. She's heard from Jennifer that there are problems with the loan. She wants to know if there's anything I can do to speed things along. Rick has been so dedicated to this project, she says. It would break his heart if it doesn't work out. I explain the situation in banking terms she doesn't understand, throwing in phrases like fiduciary responsibility and risk assessment protocols. She asks if I'm still angry about Christmas. I laugh and tell her I'd forgotten all about Christmas. This is just business, Mom. Nothing personal. She doesn't sound convinced, but she lets it go. Summer arrives and the brewery application is drowning in red tape. Every document Rick submits requires clarification. Every clarification reveals new issues. His contractor bids come in higher than expected. His investor pulls out after seeing the mounting costs. His liquor license application gets flagged because of a DUI from 10 years ago that he'd forgotten to disclose. Each problem is legitimate. Each problem is documented. Each problem is exactly what a thorough loan officer would uncover. I'm not creating obstacles. I'm just declining to ignore them the way another officer might. The approval committee finally reviews Rick's application in late July. I present the file myself, walking them through each concern methodically. The foundation issues, the zoning complications, the cost overruns, the reference problems, the investor withdrawal, The liquor license flag. I don't editorialize. I don't need to. The facts speak for themselves. The committee votes to deny the application based on insufficient financial stability and unresolved property issues. I'm asked to deliver the news personally, given the family connection. I agree with appropriate reluctance. Rick and Jennifer come to my office on a Thursday afternoon. They sit across from my desk like defendants awaiting sentencing. I slide the denial letter across the mahogany surface and watch Rick's face as he reads it. The color drains from his skin. Jennifer's hand finds his and grips it tight. I explain the decision in my gentlest voice. I'm so sorry. I fought for this application as hard as I could, but the committee felt the risks were too significant. Rick looks up at me with eyes that suddenly understand everything. You did this, he says quietly. Every delay, every requirement, every problem. You orchestrated all of it. Jennifer tells him to stop, that he's being paranoid, but he's not looking at her. He's looking at me, really seeing me for the first time. I meet his gaze without flinching. Uncle Rick, I understand you're upset, but I assure you, every step of this process followed standard banking protocols. If you'd like, I can recommend you speak with our lending ombudsman about filing an appeal. He stands up so fast his chair falls backward. You're punishing me for Christmas, he says. For one stupid night when I'd had too much to drink? I stand as well, my voice still professional, still calm. I'm not punishing anyone. I'm a loan officer who performed her due diligence on a high-risk application. If you feel I've been unfair, you're welcome to escalate your complaint to my supervisor. Here's his card. Rick stares at the business card in his hand like it's something alive. Jennifer is crying now, quietly, her mascara running black tracks down her face. She pulls Rick toward the door. He follows, stumbling slightly, looking back at me one last time. The Ice Queen, he says. I finally see it. You really are made of ice. After they leave, I sit in my chair and look out at the city. My hands aren't shaking. My heart isn't racing. I feel calm, centered, complete. On my desk, Rick's denied application sits in its folder. Every page a testament to thoroughness, professionalism, excellence. Not a single decision I made was wrong. Not a single requirement was unjustified. I simply applied the same standards to his application that I'd apply to any strangers. The only difference was that I didn't give him special treatment. I didn't smooth over problems or overlook red flags. I didn't prioritize his dreams over my bank's interests. That evening, I go home to my apartment overlooking Elliott Bay and open a bottle of wine. I don't toast to revenge. I don't celebrate destruction. I simply acknowledge that some baptisms take longer than others, but they're all permanent in the end. Uncle Rick tried to baptize me with gravy and ridicule. I baptized him with procedure and protocol. His version left stains that could be washed out. Mine left ruins that would last forever. The Morrison warehouse stays empty. The for sale sign weathers in the rain. In Pine Haven, people talk about poor Rick Ashford and his failed dreams. Some blame the economy, some blame bad luck. A few whisper about that niece of his who works at the bank, but without proof, whispers stay whispers. And I stay exactly what I've always been, a woman who does her job thoroughly, professionally, and without exception. Sometimes family is family, and sometimes family is just people who think blood means permission. The invitation arrives 6 weeks after the loan denial. Heavy cream cardstock, elegant script, my name written in Jennifer's careful handwriting. I'm invited to Rick and Jennifer's wedding, scheduled for October 15th at Pine Haven Community Church. The same church where Pastor Mitchell had told me about Rick's unfulfilled commitments. I RSVP yes and mark my calendar, already planning what I'll wear. My assistant asks if I'm okay when she sees the invitation on my desk. She'd been there for the final meeting with Rick, had heard his accusations through my office door. I tell her I'm fine, that family complications are just part of life. She doesn't look convinced, but she knows better than to push. I've built a reputation at the bank for being unflappable, for keeping personal matters separate from professional ones. Even when personal matters involve systematically dismantling your uncle's dreams through legitimate procedural channels. The promotion to regional credit director comes with new responsibilities. I'm now overseeing loan officers in 15 branches, reviewing their most complex applications, setting department policy. My supervisor, Marcus Chen, calls me into his office to discuss performance metrics. He brings up Rick's application without mentioning the family connection, using it as an example of exemplary due diligence. This is the kind of thorough analysis we need across all our commercial lending, he says. You caught problems that could have cost us hundreds of thousands in defaults. I accept the praise with appropriate modesty, while mentally calculating how many other families in 3 counties now fall under my jurisdiction. At night, I research Rick's activities on social media. Jennifer's posts tell the story my office denials created. The brewery dream is dead, but they're focusing on what matters, on their love, on building a simpler life together. Rick has taken a job as a sales associate at the hardware store where he owes $4,000. The owner is deducting his debt from each paycheck. Jennifer is working double shifts as a receptionist at the medical clinic. Their wedding will be small, intimate, just close family. The photos she posts show them trying to smile, but there's something hollow behind their eyes. Something that understands the world is smaller than they thought, that dreams have sharp edges, that nieces remember everything. My mother calls monthly now, each conversation carefully avoiding the loan situation. She talks about the weather, about my father's garden, about my cousin's pregnancy. She mentions Rick occasionally, always with studied casualness. He's doing okay, she says, adjusting to things. Jennifer is good for him. The wedding will be nice, even if it's not what they originally planned. She never asks if I had anything to do with the denial. Maybe she doesn't want to know. Maybe she already does. I start attending city planning meetings in Pine Haven once a month. As regional credit director, I explain, I need to stay informed about development trends in all my territories. The Planning Commission welcomes my expertise. I provide input on zoning applications, on infrastructure improvements, on business development strategies. I become a familiar face, a respected voice. When the Morrison warehouse comes up for discussion, when other potential buyers show interest, I'm ready with concerns. The foundation issues are documented. The tenant council's objections established precedent. Any commercial food service application for that property will face significant hurdles. Better to pursue other locations, I suggest. The commission values my opinion. Summer fades into fall and I shop for a wedding gift. Something meaningful, something that shows I care. I settle on a set of Williams-Sonoma cookware, expensive and elegant. The card I include is warm. Wishing you both every happiness as you begin this new chapter together. May your home be filled with love and laughter. Love, Victoria. I have it shipped directly to their address, timing it to arrive 2 days before the wedding. The morning of the ceremony, I drive to Pine Haven under clear skies. My dress is understated, a navy sheath that's appropriate without drawing attention. I arrive early and take a seat in the middle of the church, close enough to be visible but far enough to avoid the immediate family rows. The sanctuary fills slowly. Fewer than 50 people, nothing like the 100+ they'd planned when the brewery was going to make them local celebrities. Jennifer's parents look exhausted. Rick's brother, my father, sits stiff and uncomfortable in his suit. My mother keeps glancing back at me with an expression I can't quite read. The ceremony is simple. Pastor Mitchell officiates, speaking about commitment and perseverance through difficulties. Rick waits at the altar, looking older than his 47 years. When Jennifer walks down the aisle, her dress is beautiful, but clearly budget-conscious. Nothing like the designer gown she'd shown my mother photos of last winter. Rick cries when he sees her. Real tears, the kind that come from gratitude mixed with grief. They exchange vows they wrote themselves. Rick promises to build a good life with her, even if it's not the life they'd imagined. Jennifer promises to stand beside him through setbacks and disappointments. No one mentions the brewery, but everyone is thinking about it. At the reception in the church basement, I make appropriate small talk with relatives. I compliment the decorations, the food, the bride's dress. My Aunt Susan corners me near the punch bowl and asks pointed questions about bank lending practices. Do they really have to be so strict? She wants to know. Couldn't exceptions be made for family? I explain risk management principles and fiduciary duty until her eyes glaze over. She pats my hand and says it's too bad Rick's timing was off, that maybe in a few years he can try again. I agree that timing is everything, taking a slow sip of punch to hide my smile. Rick avoids me for most of the reception. He and Jennifer greet guests, cut their modest cake, dance their first dance to a song about holding on through storms. But I catch him watching me when he thinks I'm not looking. During the bouquet toss, Jennifer throws directly toward me, I step aside and let my cousin Dana catch it instead. The symbolism isn't lost on anyone. When speeches begin, Rick's best friend talks about resilience and character. My father gives a toast about family loyalty that feels like an accusation even though he never looks my way. No one asks me to speak. I hadn't expected them to. As the reception winds down, Jennifer approaches my table. She's still in her wedding dress, her makeup faded, exhaustion etched around her eyes. She thanks me for coming, for the gift, for everything I tried to do with the loan. Her voice is sincere, but there's something careful in it, like she's testing words before speaking them. She says she knows I did my job, that she doesn't blame me for the denial. But she wants me to understand what it cost them. Rick had put everything into that dream. His savings, his reputation, his sense of purpose. Losing it broke something in him. She can see it in the way he stares at nothing sometimes, in the way he apologizes for things that aren't his fault. I express sympathy, mention that sometimes setbacks lead to better opportunities. She nods but doesn't look convinced. Then she asks the question I've been waiting for. Do you ever wonder if you could have done anything differently? If maybe one or two of those requirements could have been waived? I meet her eyes directly. Jennifer, if I had waived requirements and the loan had defaulted, Rick would have lost even more. I'd have been setting him up for bigger failure. Everything I did protected him as much as the bank. She searches my face for something, truth or lies, I'm not sure which. Finally, she nods and walks away. Rick finds me as I'm leaving. He's loosened his tie and there's champagne on his breath, but he's not drunk. He stands between me and the door, not threatening, but deliberate. He tells me he knows exactly what I did. Every delay, every requirement, every phone call to agencies that slowed the process. He can't prove it, he says, but he knows. I could deny it. Instead, I ask him if he remembers Christmas dinner. The confusion on his face would be comical if this weren't so serious. What does Christmas have to do with anything? He asks. Everything, I tell him. It has everything to do with everything. I describe what that night felt like from my perspective. The gravy soaking through my silk blouse, the weight of 24 family members' laughter, the humiliation that burned hotter than shame. The way he'd called me inhuman, a monster in expensive clothing. The way everyone had let him do it, had joined in the joke, had made me the entertainment. He tries to interrupt, but I don't let him. I remind him that he'd apologize later, but apologies don't unring bells. They don't erase memories or restore dignity. He's staring at me now like I'm speaking a language he barely understands. So, yes, I tell him. I did my job with exceptional thoroughness when reviewing your application. I didn't give you special treatment or family favors. I applied every standard that exists, followed every procedure, crossed every T and dotted every I. If that feels like punishment, maybe it's because you expected privilege you hadn't earned. He opens his mouth, closes it, opens it again. You destroyed my life over one bad night, he finally says. His voice cracks on the word destroyed. I adjust my purse on my shoulder. No, Uncle Rick. You destroyed your own life. I just declined to save it. The drive back to Seattle takes 2 hours and I spend it replaying Jennifer's question. Do I wonder if I could have done anything differently? The honest answer is no. Every decision I made was defensible, documented, appropriate. Another loan officer might have been more generous, might have smoothed over rough patches or given the benefit of doubt. But I wasn't required to be generous. I was required to be thorough. That I happened to be thorough with someone who'd humiliated me publicly was simply coincidence meeting opportunity. That night, I draft an email to Marcus about expanding our commercial lending requirements. I suggest additional environmental assessments for properties over 50 years old, mandatory business reference checks for all first-time commercial borrowers, and updated structural inspection standards. My proposals are reasonable, based on Rick's case study. If implemented, they'll make commercial lending in our region significantly more difficult. Marcus responds within an hour. Excellent suggestions. Let's discuss at Monday's leadership meeting. I close my laptop and pour another glass of wine. The wedding photos appear on social media over the following week. Jennifer posts them with captions about new beginnings and unexpected blessings. In every photo, Rick is smiling, but there's a quality to his expression that wasn't there before my office became involved. He looks diminished. Not just sad, but smaller, like he's taken up less space in the world. My mother is in several photos, her face carefully neutral. My father appears in only one, standing apart from the group with his arms crossed. The photo that stops me shows Rick and Jennifer cutting their cake. In the background, barely visible, is the gift table. My Williams-Sonoma box sits prominent among the modest presents, its expensive wrapping paper gleaming like a taunt. The reviews for Pine Haven's other breweries start appearing in my feed, algorithms having learned my interests. 3 successful operations within 15 miles, all thriving, all serving holiday-themed beers during the season. Rick's concept would have competed directly with them, but he'd had a better location, better visibility, stronger initial community support. In another timeline with another loan officer, he might have succeeded. In this timeline, he's selling hammers for $12 an hour while paying off old debts. I attend another planning commission meeting in October. The Morrison Warehouse comes up again. A restaurant group from Olympia is interested in the property. They have better financing, better references, better everything than Rick had. But the foundation issues remain. The tenant council's objections established precedent. The environmental assessment on file raises questions. I provide my professional opinion that the property requires significant investment before any food service operation should be considered. The commission thanks me for my diligence. The restaurant group withdraws their interest 2 weeks later. By November, Rick's social media presence has shrunk to almost nothing. Jennifer still posts occasionally, but Rick is absent from the photos. My mother mentions during one of our calls that he's been having trouble sleeping, that Jennifer is worried about him. Mom's voice carries a weight that might be accusation or might be warning. She says Rick talks about the brewery obsessively, about what could have been, about all the small decisions that led to the denial. Sometimes, she says carefully, he talks about you, about how different things might have been if you'd wanted to help instead of just following rules. I let her words hang in the air before responding. Mom, I did help. I saved him from a potentially catastrophic business failure. If the brewery had opened and failed, he'd have lost everything, plus gone into massive debt. This way, he's disappointed, but not destroyed. She makes a sound that might be agreement or might be disbelief. Then she asks when I'm coming home for Christmas. The question feels like a trap. I tell her I'm thinking about spending the holidays in Seattle this year, that work has been demanding. She sighs, but doesn't push. The Morrison Warehouse is still empty when I drive through Pine Haven in early December. The for sale sign has faded, the property looking more derelict with each passing month. I park across the street and study it, imagining the brewery that will never exist. The holiday lights that won't glow in the windows, the customers who won't gather for seasonal beers, the success Rick won't experience. It would have been good, I think, if he'd been someone else's uncle, if Christmas dinner had gone differently, if gravy hadn't been weaponized, if families were as simple as blood. My phone rings. It's Marcus, asking if I'm available for a conference call about the new lending standards I'd proposed. They're being implemented regional-wide, he says. My thoroughness with the Ashford case has become the template for commercial loan analysis across 3 counties. He's recommending me for Senior Vice President of Commercial Lending. The promotion would mean more responsibility, more territory, more applications crossing my desk for final review. More families who need loans will encounter my standards, my procedures, my exceptional attention to detail. I accept the call and discuss lending policy while watching the empty warehouse across the street. The building stands like a monument to choices and consequences, to the distance between dreams and documentation. Somewhere in this small town, Rick is finishing a shift at the hardware store, coming home to Jennifer and their modest rental house, lying awake at night wondering where it all went wrong. He'll never know the exact moment I decided that Christmas dinner required a response. He'll never see the careful planning, the strategic phone calls, the perfectly legitimate obstacles I placed in his path. That's the thing about revenge served through institutional channels. It's invisible until it's irreversible. It's professional until it's personal. It's justified right up until the moment someone asks if it needed to be quite so thorough. And by then, the paperwork is filed, the decisions are documented, and the Ice Queen has proven she's exactly what her uncle called her, just not in the way he meant. The Christmas party at Cascade Regional Bank is held at a downtown Seattle hotel with views of the Sound. 200 employees in formal wear, celebrating another successful year. I wear red, bold, and unapologetic, and arrive alone. Marcus finds me at the bar and pulls me aside, champagne in hand. He's had excellent news from the board. The senior vice president position is mine, effective January 1st. My lending protocols have reduced our commercial default rate by 18% in 6 months. I'm exactly the kind of leader they need going forward. We toast to success, and I smile at all the right moments while my phone buzzes repeatedly in my clutch. My mother's texts start at 7 p.m. Your father and I would really love to see you for Christmas. Rick and Jennifer will be there. Please come home. The texts become more insistent as the evening progresses. It's been a year since that awful dinner. Everyone deserves a chance to move forward. We're family, Victoria. At 9 p.m., Jennifer texts directly. I know things are complicated, but Rick needs closure. This has been so hard on him. Please, for me, can you just come to one dinner? I silence my phone and dance with a junior analyst who doesn't know my history, who sees only the successful executive in the red dress. But at midnight, alone in my apartment with the city lights spread below, I make a decision. I'll go to Pine Haven for Christmas. Not because they've asked, not because I've forgiven anything, but because there's a final chapter to write, a closing scene that requires my presence. I text my mother back, I'll be there. See you Christmas Day. Her response is immediate, grateful, relieved. She has no idea what I'm planning because I haven't decided yet. I only know that walking away now would leave the story incomplete. The week before Christmas, I do something I haven't done since last year. I search for Pine Haven Community Church's Christmas service schedule. Pastor Mitchell is hosting a special dinner on Christmas Eve for families working through difficulties. The description mentions reconciliation, healing, and moving forward together. It's exactly the kind of well-meaning intervention that makes my teeth ache. I wonder if my mother arranged it, if she's trying to orchestrate some kind of public forgiveness scene where I absolve Rick and everyone feels better. If so, she's miscalculated badly. I drive to Pine Haven on Christmas Eve afternoon, the highway empty and gray. My trunk contains wrapped presents for my parents, my cousins, generic gifts that show appropriate family affection. There's nothing for Rick and Jennifer. That absence is deliberate. I check into the Pine Haven Inn, the town's only hotel, a dated place with floral wallpaper and memories of every family visit I've made over the years. The woman at the front desk recognizes me, asks if I'm in town for the holidays. She mentions she'd heard about Rick's brewery plans falling through. Such a shame, she says. He seems so excited about it. I agree that it is indeed a shame and take my key. The church service is at 6. I arrive at 5:45 wearing a cream cashmere sweater and dark jeans, looking successful but approachable. The fellowship hall is decorated with the same worn ornaments they've used for decades. 20 people mill around tables laden with ham and casseroles. Pastor Mitchell greets me at the door with surprise and pleasure. Victoria, how wonderful that you came. Your mother will be so happy. He guides me toward the family table where my parents sit with Rick and Jennifer. The look on Rick's face when he sees me is complicated, fear and anger, and something that might be desperate hope, all mixed together. Jennifer stands and hugs me, whispering thanks in my ear. Rick remains seated, his jaw tight. My father nods acknowledgement. My mother's eyes fill with tears and she mouths, "Thank you," across the table. Pastor Mitchell asks us to bow our heads for grace. He prays for healing, for open hearts, for the strength to forgive past hurts and move forward in love. The irony of his words, given his role in tanking Rick's loan references, is exquisite. When the prayer ends, people serve themselves food, and the careful small talk begins. Rick barely eats. He pushes food around his plate while Jennifer makes conversation about my work, the weather, anything but the obvious tension. My mother tries too hard, her voice bright and brittle. My father is silent, watching me with an expression I can't decode. After dinner, Pastor Mitchell stands and explains that tonight's gathering has a special purpose. He invites families who've experienced conflicts to share their stories, to speak their truths in a safe space. Several people talk about financial difficulties, health scares, teenage rebellion. Then he looks directly at our table. Would anyone from the Ashford family like to share? The silence stretches. Jennifer's hand finds Rick's under the table. My mother looks at me pleadingly. Pastor Mitchell waits with patient expectation. Finally, Rick stands. His voice is rough when he speaks. He talks about the brewery dream, about how it represented more than a business to him. It was proof that he could be more than the family screw-up, more than the guy who drank too much and made bad jokes. When it fell apart, he says, it took his sense of purpose with it. He talks about the loan denial, the mounting obstacles, the feeling that the universe was conspiring against him. Then he looks at me. And maybe it was, he says. Or maybe it was just my niece doing her job very, very well. Pastor Mitchell asks Rick to explain. Rick's laugh is hollow. Christmas dinner last year, he says. I got drunk and did something stupid. Really stupid. I humiliated Victoria in front of the whole family, threw food at her, called her names, made her the joke of the night. He pauses, swallowing hard. And then months later, she was the loan officer reviewing my application. What are the odds, right? Pastor Mitchell's face shows confusion. Surely, he says, personal feelings wouldn't influence professional banking decisions. Rick looks at him like he's deeply naive. You'd think, he says. But every single requirement, every delay, every issue that came up, it all went through her desk. And she never once helped me through it. She followed every rule perfectly until there were too many rules for me to pass. Now everyone is looking at me. I set down my fork with deliberate care. Pastor Mitchell asks if I'd like to respond. I stand, smoothing my sweater, meeting Rick's eyes across the room. I thank him for his honesty. Then I explain, clearly and calmly, exactly what happened with his loan application. The foundation issues were real. The environmental assessment was standard. The reference problems were documented. The investor withdrawal was his own issue. The liquor license flag was his past catching up. I didn't create any of those problems. I simply refused to overlook them. The difference, I say, is that another loan officer might have been more charitable, might have given family the benefit of the doubt. I did not. Why not? Jennifer asks quietly. Her voice breaks on the question. If you could have helped, even a little, why didn't you? I turn to face her. Because Christmas dinner taught me something important, I say. It taught me that being family doesn't mean they see you as human. Rick didn't throw food at a stranger. He threw it at someone he'd known her entire life, someone who'd never done anything to him except be successful. He humiliated me because he thought he could, because I was family and family is supposed to take it. Jennifer's face crumbles, but I'm not finished. So when his application came across my desk, I treated him exactly as he'd treated me. Not as family. As someone whose dreams were less important than my professional standards. The room has gone completely silent. My mother's face is white. My father leans back in his chair, arms crossed. Pastor Mitchell looks deeply uncomfortable. Rick is staring at me with an expression that's almost wonder. You really did it, he says. You really destroyed everything I'd worked for because I was drunk and stupid one night. I shake my head. No, Uncle Rick. I didn't destroy anything. I declined to build it for you. There's a difference. I declined to use my position to give you advantages you hadn't earned. I declined to prioritize your feelings over my bank's interests. I declined to pretend that Christmas dinner never happened or that it didn't matter. Jennifer stands, her chair scraping loud in the silence. That's not revenge, she says, her voice shaking. That's just cruelty wrapped in professional language. You let him hope. You let us plan and dream and invest our savings. You could have denied the loan in week 1 if you were going to deny it anyway. Instead, you dragged it out for months, watching us struggle. I meet her accusation calmly. I gave your application every opportunity to succeed, I say. If Rick had stronger finances, better references, no property issues, it would have been approved. The timeline was standard for complex commercial loans. That it felt cruel is unfortunate, but irrelevant. Banking isn't therapy. My mother finally speaks. She asks if I feel good about this, if destroying my uncle's dreams has made me happy. Her voice is thick with disappointment. I look at her directly. Mom, I feel professional satisfaction at having done my job thoroughly. Whether that makes me happy is the wrong question. The right question is whether Rick feels any regret for what he did to me. Whether anyone at that Christmas dinner thought about how their laughter affected me. Whether family means anything besides being someone's acceptable target. The room is utterly still. My mother's mouth opens, but no words come out. Rick's voice, when he speaks again, is different. Quieter. He says he's sorry for Christmas dinner. He's said it before, but this time there's weight behind the words. He was going through a hard time, he says. His second divorce was fresh. He was drinking too much. He was angry at the world, and I represented everything he wasn't. Successful, stable, together. It wasn't fair and it wasn't right, and he's genuinely sorry. He can't undo it, but he is sorry. Then he asks the question that matters. Is there any amount of apology that would have made a difference? If I'd groveled enough, would you have helped the loan go through? I consider lying. Consider softening it. Instead, I tell the truth. No, I say. Your apology was meaningless because it only came when you needed something from me. You weren't sorry Christmas night. You weren't sorry in the weeks after. You got sorry when your loan application appeared on my desk. That's not contrition. That's strategy. And I don't make lending decisions based on the quality of apologies. Rick nods slowly, like I've confirmed something he suspected. Jennifer is crying quietly. My father stands and announces he's leaving. He looks at me and says simply, "This family is broken, and you broke it." Then he walks out. My mother follows him after a moment's hesitation, not looking at me. Pastor Mitchell tries to salvage the situation. He talks about the power of forgiveness, about how holding grudges poisons the soul, about Jesus and turning the other cheek. I let him finish before responding. "Pastor," I say, "I forgave Rick months ago. Forgiveness doesn't require me to fund his dreams or set aside professional standards. I can forgive him for being cruel and still think he was a bad credit risk." The two things are separate. He looks troubled by this logic, but doesn't argue. The other families in the room are frozen, witnesses to a disaster they didn't sign up for. I collect my coat and purse. I wish everyone a Merry Christmas. Then I leave. Outside, the night is cold and clear, stars visible above Pine Haven's quiet streets. My car is alone in the parking lot, everyone else having walked from nearby houses. I sit in the driver's seat, but don't start the engine. Inside the fellowship hall, I can see through the windows as people begin to move again, gathering around Rick and Jennifer with comfort and solidarity. They're the victims in this story, the ones who lost their dreams to a heartless banker. I'm the villain, the ice queen who valued procedure over family. My phone rings. It's Marcus. He apologizes for calling on Christmas Eve, but there's an urgent matter. Another commercial loan application has come through with some complications. Would I be willing to review it tonight? He'll email the file. The borrower is from Pine Haven, he says. A woman opening a craft brewery in the old Morrison warehouse. She has excellent credit, solid investors, and she's already resolved the foundation issues. Her name is Amanda Fletcher. I tell Marcus I'll look at it right away. After we hang up, I sit in my car and start to laugh. Amanda Fletcher was at Christmas dinner last year. She'd been sitting 3 seats down from Rick, laughing at his gravy baptism joke. She'd called it comedy gold. And now she wants a loan to open the brewery Rick had dreamed of, in the exact location his dreams had died. The universe isn't poetic. It's practical. It puts opportunities in front of people who are prepared to seize them. And it puts me in position to decide who gets those opportunities. I drive back to the hotel and open my laptop. Amanda's application is comprehensive and professional. Her business plan is better than Rick's was. Her financials are stronger. Her references check out perfectly. By any objective standard, this loan should be approved. I review every page with the same thoroughness I applied to Rick's application, looking for problems, testing for weaknesses. I find none. Amanda Fletcher has done everything right. At 2 a.m., I draft my recommendation. The application meets all criteria for approval. I suggest expedited processing given the quality of the submission and the borrower's qualifications. I list every strength, highlight every positive indicator, note that this project would benefit the Pine Haven community and represent minimal risk for the bank. Then I save the document and close my laptop. Christmas morning, I skip my parents' house. I text my mother that I'm returning to Seattle, That I think it's best if I stay away from family gatherings for a while. She responds with a message clearly written by my father. That's probably for the best. Take care of yourself. No mention of love, no request to reconsider. Just acknowledgement that the bridge between us has been burned and we all watched it happen. The drive back to Seattle is peaceful. I stop for coffee and breakfast at a diner off the highway, sitting alone in a booth with my laptop. I submit Amanda Fletcher's loan recommendation with my highest endorsement. The approval will go through by New Year's. She'll have her brewery by spring. Rick will watch from his job at the hardware store as someone else builds his dream in his location with his concept. And he'll know, with absolute certainty, that I could have been as generous with his application as I was with hers. That the difference between success and failure was measured not in credit scores or business plans, but in gravy stains and cruel laughter, and the Ice Queen's perfect memory. The approval notification arrives 3 days later. Amanda Fletcher will open Pine Haven Holiday Brewing in April. The local paper runs a story about economic development and community growth. Jennifer posts the article on social media with no comment. Rick's account stays silent. My mother doesn't call. The town moves forward without me, exactly as planned. The brewery's grand opening happens on a perfect April afternoon. I take a personal day and drive to Pine Haven, parking 2 blocks away where I can see the Morrison warehouse transformed. The foundation has been repaired, the exterior repainted in cheerful reds and greens. A professional sign hangs above the entrance, Pine Haven Holiday Brewing Co. The parking lot is full. A line of people stretches down the sidewalk, waiting to be among the first customers. I recognize half the faces from various family gatherings. None of them notice me sitting in my car, watching through designer sunglasses. Amanda Fletcher stands at the entrance greeting guests, her smile wide and genuine. She's wearing a custom brewery t-shirt and looks every bit the successful entrepreneur Rick had imagined himself being. The local news van is parked across the street, filming B-roll of the crowd. The mayor is scheduled to speak at 2 p.m. Everything Rick had planned, everything he'd visualized during those months of hope, is happening without him. I check the time. He'll be at the hardware store now, restocking shelves or helping customers select the correct size nails. His shift doesn't end until 6. I don't go inside the brewery. That would be too obvious, too cruel even for me. Instead, I drive to the hardware store. The bell chimes as I enter, and there's Rick, wearing a green apron and helping an elderly woman select paint colors. He doesn't see me immediately. I browse the tool aisle, giving him time to finish with his customer. When he finally notices me, his entire body goes rigid. For a moment, I think he might refuse to help me, might call the manager or ask me to leave. Instead, he approaches slowly, his expression carefully neutral. "Can I help you find something?" he asks. His voice is professionally dead, all emotion stripped out. I tell him I'm looking for brackets for shelving, something sturdy that can hold significant weight. He leads me to the correct aisle and shows me several options, explaining weight capacities and installation requirements. He's good at this, I realize, patient and knowledgeable. He could have been good at the brewery, too. I select the most expensive brackets and follow him to the register. As he scans items, I mention casually that I drove past the new brewery on my way here. Quite a turnout for the opening. His hands pause over the register. "You drove all the way from Seattle to shop at our hardware store," he says flatly. I meet his eyes. "I drove to see you," I say, "to make sure you knew about the brewery, about Amanda Fletcher getting approved for the exact loan you were denied. I wanted you to understand it wasn't about the Morrison warehouse being impossible to finance. It was about you being impossible to approve." The color drains from his face. He finishes ringing up my purchase mechanically. "That'll be $43.17, he says. I hand him my credit card. "Do you want to know what was different about her application?" I ask. "What made Amanda Fletcher approvable when you weren't?" He swipes the card without responding. I tell him anyway. She had better credit, yes. Stronger references, certainly. No history of unpaid debts or reliability issues. But more than that, she'd never humiliated a loan officer in front of their entire family. She'd never made anyone feel like less than human for her own entertainment. The bar for her approval was standard industry height. For yours, I admit, it was higher. Considerably higher. The receipt prints and he hands it to me along with my card. His voice when he speaks is barely audible. "You're a monster," he says. "I'm a loan officer who performed her job without favoritism," I correct. The fact that you expected special treatment, that you assumed blood would override professionalism, says more about you than me. A customer enters behind me, and Rick's manager glances over from her office. Rick pastes on a smile and thanks me for shopping at Pinehaven Hardware. I wish him a pleasant afternoon and leave with my unnecessary brackets. The story spreads through Pinehaven faster than I'd anticipated. My cousin Dana calls that evening, her voice tight with fury. She's heard from Jennifer that I deliberately came to town during the brewery opening, that I went to Rick's workplace to twist the knife, that I essentially admitted to sabotaging his loan application. How could you be so vindictive, she demands, over something that happened a year ago when he was drunk? I ask if she remembers laughing that night. She goes quiet. I describe what her laughter sounded like from my perspective, how it felt to be the family joke. She says that's different, it wasn't personal. I tell her that everything is personal when it's happening to you. My father calls next. This is the first time we've spoken since Christmas Eve. He says what I did to Rick crosses a line from revenge into cruelty, that I've poisoned family relationships possibly beyond repair, that my mother cries about it, worried I've become someone she doesn't recognize. I ask him if he said anything to Rick that Christmas night, if he defended me or told his brother to stop. The silence on the line is answer enough. So you watched me get humiliated and did nothing, I say. But now that Rick faces consequences, now you find your voice. He tells me I've become hard. I tell him I've become honest about what family actually means. The reviews for Pinehaven Holiday Brewing appear online over the following weeks. 5 stars, enthusiastic descriptions of the atmosphere and beer selection. Amanda Fletcher is profiled in a regional magazine as an example of successful female entrepreneurship. The article mentions the Morrison Warehouse's transformation, how a building that sat empty for years is now a community gathering place. No mention of Rick, of the application that died so hers could live. But everyone in Pinehaven knows. Everyone understands that the Ice Queen from the bank chose who won and who lost. Jennifer sends an email in May. It's long and thoughtful and devastating. She explains that Rick has fallen into depression. He can barely sleep. He obsesses over every decision point in the loan application, wondering what he could have done differently. Except he knows nothing he did would have mattered because I'd already decided his fate the moment his paperwork crossed my desk. She writes that she doesn't expect my sympathy or my help. She just wants me to understand that my revenge accomplished its goal. Rick is broken in ways that go beyond the failed business. He wakes up at night and stares at nothing. He's started drinking again. She's trying to hold them together, but it's hard when he can't see a future worth working toward. I read her email 3 times. Then I draft a response. I explain that my decision on Rick's loan was based on legitimate banking concerns, not personal vendetta. That conflating the two is convenient but inaccurate. That if Rick is struggling, he should seek professional help rather than blaming external factors for his mental health. I write that I'm sorry he's suffering, but not sorry I did my job thoroughly. That the two can coexist. Then I delete the entire draft without sending it. There's nothing I can say that Jennifer would hear, no explanation that would satisfy her. She needs me to be the villain. Rick needs me to be the reason. Taking that away from them would be an actual cruelty. Summer arrives and Marcus announces my promotion is being accelerated. The board is impressed with my performance metrics. I'm being moved to senior vice president immediately, with responsibility for commercial lending across 5 counties instead of 3. My territory now includes regions I've never visited, applications from people I'll never meet. But the standards I set, the protocols I established, they'll follow. Every thorough review, every careful investigation of references, every environmental assessment and structural inspection, they all stem from lessons learned during one uncle's failed brewery application. The Pinehaven Town Council reaches out in August. They're updating their commercial development guidelines and would appreciate my expertise. Would I be willing to review their proposed changes and provide feedback? I agree and spend a week analyzing their documentation. My recommendations strengthen requirements for new businesses, add layers of review for properties with historical issues, and establish stricter lending coordination protocols. The council adopts my suggestions unanimously. Pinehaven is now one of the most difficult small towns in Washington state to open a business in. Amanda Fletcher's brewery will likely be the last major commercial development for years. Rick files a formal complaint with the State Banking Commission in September. He alleges that I used my position to retaliate against him for personal reasons, that I violated professional ethics and possibly banking regulations. The investigation takes 3 months. They review every document from his application, interview everyone involved in the approval process, examine my communications and decision timeline. The investigator calls me for a final interview in December. She's thorough and professional. She asks pointed questions about my relationship with Rick, about Christmas dinner, about whether personal feelings influenced my review. I answer every question honestly. Yes, Rick humiliated me publicly. Yes, I was angry about it. But no, that anger didn't cause me to invent problems with his application. The foundation issues were documented by a licensed engineer. The reference problems were confirmed through direct interviews. The financial concerns were based on his actual credit history and debt levels. At what point in my review process, I ask her, did I fabricate information or ignore standard banking protocols? She reviews her notes carefully. At no point, she admits. Your review was exceptionally thorough but not inappropriate. The complaint is dismissed in January. Rick's last avenue of appeal, his final hope that I'd overstepped legal boundaries, evaporates. The dismissal letter becomes public record. Local news covers the story. Bank executive cleared of retaliation charges. The article presents Rick as a disgruntled loan applicant who blamed personal relationships for his business failure. Amanda Fletcher is quoted saying that the lending process was professional and appropriate for her. 2 experts in banking ethics state that thoroughness is not the same as bias. Rick comes across as exactly what he is, a man who expected special treatment and became vindictive when he didn't receive it. Public opinion, what little exists, shifts against him. Even my mother calls to say she thinks he should let this go, that he's making himself look worse. Valentine's Day brings an unexpected development. Jennifer files for divorce. The court documents are public record in their county, and my cousin Dana sends me screenshots. Jennifer cites irreconcilable differences and Rick's refusal to move forward from past disappointments. She's requesting an equitable division of their minimal assets and asking for her maiden name back. The marriage that survived the loan denial couldn't survive its aftermath. Rick's obsession with what he'd lost consumed everything, including the one good thing he'd actually achieved. Dana's text with the screenshots includes just one word, satisfied? I don't respond to Dana. But late that night, I open a bottle of wine that costs more than Rick makes in a week, and I consider her question seriously. Am I satisfied? Rick has lost the brewery dream, his reputation in Pine Haven, his family's respect, his wife, and nearly 2 years of his life to depression and bitterness. He's achieved a level of ruin that goes beyond anything I specifically engineered. The loan denial was just the first domino. Everything after fell through his own inability to accept defeat and move on. So am I satisfied? The honest answer is yes. Not because I enjoy his suffering in some sadistic way, but because the scales feel balanced now. Christmas dinner's humiliation has been answered with proportional devastation. The laughter that echoed through that room has been replaced with silence. The uncle who thought his niece was an acceptable target learned that some targets shoot back. And everyone who watched, who participated, who treated my degradation as entertainment, they've all learned that the Ice Queen's memory is long and her resources are extensive. Spring comes around again, and I drive through Pine Haven one final time. The brewery is thriving, adding outdoor seating to accommodate growing crowds. The Morrison warehouse looks nothing like the derelict building Rick had seen potential in. The hardware store still stands on Main Street, Rick presumably inside restocking shelves. My parents' house shows signs of aging, the garden less maintained than it used to be. The church where Pastor Mitchell tried to orchestrate reconciliation is hosting a spring carnival. Everything continues without me. The town exists exactly as it did before I became involved, except now it has a successful brewery and one more cautionary tale about family expectations. I don't stop driving. There's nothing left in Pine Haven that requires my presence. Rick's suffering is complete. My revenge is finished. The story has reached its natural conclusion. I return to Seattle, to my apartment overlooking Elliott Bay, to my promotion and my protocols and my reputation for exceptional thoroughness. The Regional Commercial Lending Conference is next week, and I'm presenting a keynote on risk assessment strategies. My presentation will include a case study, anonymous but detailed, about a loan application that revealed the importance of comprehensive reference checking and environmental due diligence. The attendees will take notes. Other banks will adopt my methods. Lending standards will tighten across the Pacific Northwest because one banker decided that thoroughness matters more than sentiment. And somewhere, loan applicants with past indiscretions, with sloppy financial histories, with enemies in lending positions, they'll face obstacles they can't quite explain. They'll wonder why their applications get extra scrutiny, why standard procedures suddenly feel like targeted harassment, why the bar for approval seems higher for them than for others. They'll never know about Christmas dinner. They'll never understand how one night of cruelty rippled outward into protocols and policies that affect thousands of people. They'll just know that banking is harder than it used to be, that dreams require more documentation, that family doesn't mean what they thought it meant. And in her corner office overlooking the city, the Ice Queen will continue doing her job with exceptional, devastating thoroughness. Rick wanted to baptize me into something new that Christmas night. He succeeded. I am new. I'm the version of myself that understands power isn't about raising your voice or throwing food. It's about controlling gatekeeping mechanisms, about using institutional authority to reshape realities. It's about being the person whose signature matters, whose standards determine outcomes, whose memory never fades. The gravy washed out. The humiliation didn't. And neither did the lesson Rick taught me that night. Some people only understand consequences they can't appeal, can't negotiate, can't explain away. Sometimes family is just people who hurt you while expecting you to smile. And sometimes, if you're patient enough, thorough enough, professional enough, you can return that hurt with interest compounded over time until the debt is paid in full. 3 years pass like water under a bridge. I'm promoted again, this time to Executive Vice President of Regional Operations. My territory expands to 11 counties. My protocols become industry standard across the Pacific Northwest. Banking journals interview me about risk management. I speak at conferences, train loan officers, and write policy that affects thousands of applications annually. My life in Seattle is exactly what I built it to be. Successful, respected, untouchable. Pinehaven fades into my rearview mirror. I don't visit. My parents and I exchange birthday cards with increasingly brief messages. My cousin Dana got married. I sent a gift but didn't attend. The family understands I've moved on, or at least they've accepted that I'm not coming back. Uncle Rick becomes someone I think about the way you think about old scars, occasionally aware they exist but no longer bothered by them. Then on a Tuesday in October, Jennifer calls. I almost don't answer. Her name on my screen triggers a cascade of memories I've successfully compartmentalized, but curiosity wins and I pick up. Her voice is different than I remember, steadier somehow. She's calling to let me know that Rick died 3 weeks ago. Heart attack, sudden and massive. He was 49. The funeral was small. She thought I should know even though she didn't expect me to care. I'm surprised by what I feel, which is nothing. No satisfaction, no guilt, no grief. Just the mild interest you'd have in hearing about a stranger's death. I offer appropriate condolences. Jennifer thanks me with hollow politeness. Then she says something unexpected. I found your Christmas card. Rick kept it in his wallet all this time, the one you sent before the wedding, the one about love and laughter. She laughs, but it's not a happy sound. He carried it like proof that you were once kind to him, like evidence he could point to when people asked why he couldn't just let the loan thing go. After we hang up, I open my laptop and search for Rick's obituary. It's brief. Survived by his parents, his siblings, his nieces and nephews, worked in retail, enjoyed home brewing as a hobby. No mention of the brewery dream that consumed him. No mention of his marriage or divorce. Just a few lines acknowledging a life that ended without achieving the things it reached for. The comments section has a dozen messages, most from Pinehaven residents offering generic sympathy. One from Amanda Fletcher. Rick was always supportive of my brewery and generous with advice. He'll be missed. The irony is so thick I can taste it. My mother calls that evening. She's crying, which is rare for her. She says the funeral was terrible, that watching them lower her brother into the ground, while knowing his life ended in disappointment, was one of the hardest things she's experienced. She doesn't explicitly blame me, but the accusation lives in her silence. Finally, she asks if I'm satisfied now, if Rick's death gives me the closure I was apparently seeking. I tell her I never wanted him dead. I just wanted him to understand that actions have consequences. She asks what the difference is. I don't have an answer she'd accept. So I tell her I'm sorry for her loss and I'll send flowers. She says don't bother, that my flowers would feel like insult added to everything else. We end the call with nothing resolved because nothing can be resolved. Rick is gone, and my role in his declining years is a matter of interpretation that will never be agreed upon. To my family, I'm the villain who destroyed him. To me, I'm simply someone who declined to be his victim twice. Work continues. My protocols continue. Life continues. The Morrison Warehouse Brewery thrives under Amanda Fletcher's management. They've expanded to distribution deals with major retailers. The building Rick wanted to transform has been transformed, just not by him. Pine Haven's economy is stronger for it. The town has moved forward. Only the people who knew Rick personally remember that this success was built on someone else's buried dreams. I'm sitting in my office 6 months after Rick's death when an envelope arrives via courier. No return address, just my name and title. Inside is a letter, handwritten, dated the week before Rick died. His handwriting is shakier than I remember, but still recognizable. The letter is short. Victoria, I'm writing this because my doctor says my heart is failing and I should get my affairs in order. I don't have many affairs to order, no estate, no legacy, nothing but debts and regrets. But I wanted you to know that I finally understand. Not forgive, understand. You treated me exactly how I treated you. The difference is you had institutional power to make your response permanent, and I only had gravy. I was cruel for a night. You were thorough for a lifetime. I can't decide if that makes you a monster or just more effective than me at cruelty. Maybe there's no difference. I don't expect you to feel bad about this letter or about me dying young and disappointed. I just wanted you to know that I see it clearly now, what you did and why. And I recognize that if our positions had been reversed, if I'd had your power and you'd given me reason to use it, I probably would have done the same thing. We're more alike than either of us wanted to admit. I guess that's what family means sometimes. Rick, I read it 3 times. Then I fold it carefully and place it in my desk drawer beneath files and documents. I don't frame it. I don't destroy it. It exists, acknowledged, but not dwelled upon. Rick's final words to me are an admission that feels almost like absolution. He understood. In the end, facing death and failure, he saw the symmetry clearly. That should mean something, but it mostly just means the story is truly finished. My career continues its upward trajectory. I'm being considered for a C-suite position at a national bank. The headhunter mentions my reputation for uncompromising standards, for treating every application with equal rigor regardless of external pressures. It's exactly what major institutions need, she says. Someone who can't be swayed by relationships or sentiment. Someone whose decisions are defensible, documented, devastating when necessary. I accept the interview because it's the logical next step for someone who's mastered the art of professional distance. The interview is in New York. Corner office views, 7-figure compensation package, influence over lending policy nationwide. They ask about my approach to commercial loans. I walk them through my protocols, using hypotheticals that sound nothing like Rick's case, but contain all its lessons. They're impressed. They see exactly what the headhunter promised. Someone who treats banking as science rather than art, who values thoroughness over everything. They offer the position before I leave the building. I fly back to Seattle and stand on my balcony watching the city lights reflect off the water. The job offer sits on my phone, awaiting response. It's everything I've worked toward. Everything that Christmas dinner inadvertently created. If Rick hadn't humiliated me, I might have been a gentler loan officer. I might have valued relationships over regulations, might have given benefit of doubt more freely. I might have been someone who helped more than hurt. But that Victoria died under gravy and laughter. This Victoria, the one built from humiliation and determination, she's worth 7 figures to a national bank. She's influential and respected and completely certain that family means nothing compared to professional excellence. She's the ice queen who proved that institutional power wielded with precision beats personal cruelty every time. I accept the position. I leave Seattle for New York. I implement my protocols on a national scale. And somewhere, in lending offices across America, loan applications get scrutinized with exceptional thoroughness by officers trained in my methods. Standards tighten. Dreams get documented into submission, and the people whose applications don't survive the process never know their collateral damage from one Christmas dinner in a small Washington town. Sometimes late at night, I think about Rick's letter, about his admission that we were more alike than different, about the possibility that my revenge was just his cruelty reflected back through institutional mirrors. Then I remember the weight of gravy soaking through silk, the sound of 23 people laughing at my humiliation, the way my uncle looked while he baptized me into something new. And I remember that I didn't start this. I just finished it with tools more permanent than food and mockery. Rick taught me that family will hurt you if given permission. I taught him that some permissions once granted can never be revoked. We were excellent teachers to each other. The only difference is I survived the lesson. Pinehaven exists without me. Rick exists only in memory now, his dreams buried with him, his name occasionally mentioned in conversations about what might have been. The brewery thrives. My family adapts to my absence. Life continues for everyone except the man who threw candied yams at his niece and discovered that banking regulations, applied without mercy, are more destructive than any physical weapon. I'm not proud of what I did. I'm not ashamed either. I'm simply aware that I gave Rick exactly what he gave me, a permanent reminder that actions echo longer than apologies. His echo lasted until his heart gave out. Mine will last as long as lending protocols exist. In the contest of who hurt whom more permanently, there was never really any competition. The Ice Queen sits in her corner office in Manhattan, reviewing applications from people who will never know her history. She approves some, denies others. Each decision backed by documentation, justified by policy, defensible in any review. She's become exactly what her uncle called her that night, except professional and powerful instead of monstrous and petty. And if that's not justice, it's at least symmetry. Rick baptized me into this. I simply accepted the sacrament and made it my religion. Some family bonds are meant to be broken. Some revenges are meant to last forever. And some women learn that the best way to never be humiliated again is to become the one who controls the gates through which dreams must pass. Rick's dreams died at my gate, but thousands of others have passed through successfully. I'm not indiscriminate. I'm just thorough. The difference is everything and nothing, depending on whether you're the one being reviewed or the one doing the reviewing. The gravy washed out years ago, but the woman who wore it never forgot. And in forgetting nothing, she became unforgettable herself. Not the Ice Queen. Just someone who learned that institutional power, wielded with patience and precision, is the ultimate form of permanent damage. Rick understood in the end. That's what his letter said. Understanding doesn't mean forgiveness. It just means both parties finally saw the game board clearly. He played with cruelty. I played with protocols. His moves were loud, mine were documented. And when the game ended, only one of us was still standing at the board.